Comic Book Savant, episode 425. Welcome back to the Comic Book Savant podcast. I'm your host, James Harris. In this episode, we're going to be doing a full-on spoiler review of Avengers Endgame. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, I would say stop the podcast now, wait until you see the movie, and then come back and listen to this podcast. I will have a non-spoiler video review over on the YouTube channel, which you can find at youtube.com/comic book savant, and that won't have any spoilers. It'll be about a 5 to 6 minute just general review of the movie. If you're on the fence on seeing it, why would you? If you're listening to this podcast or you're a fan of this podcast, but if not, you can check that out over there. This is your final warning before I get into the details of the movie. So with that being said, we're done. Let me say this one quick thing before we get into the meat of the episode. I'd like to give a shout out to my friends over at the Comics Podcast Network. You can find them over at comicspodcast.com. It's a great place where you can go find more comic book related podcasts and shows to watch. If you enjoy this show and you want to expand and find more, it's a good kind of online directory, one-stop shop to find. So if you have a moment, stop over to the Comics Podcast Network over at comicspodcast.com and check out some more comic book related podcasts. They have podcasts related on particular publishers, characters, teams. They have different formats as far as a single person podcast like myself. They have dual host podcast, roundtable discussion podcast. There's a ton of different formats that you can find there as well. So you have a lot of variety to pick and choose from. So again, if you're in the market of looking for a new comic book podcast to check out, stop by at the Comic Podcast Network at comicspodcast.com. And with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the particulars about Avengers Endgame. It was directed by the Russo brothers, Anthony and Joe Russo. It's written by Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely. And the breakdown is as follows. After the devastating events of Avengers Infinity War, the universe is in ruins. With the help of the remaining allies, the Avengers assemble once more in order to undo Thanos' actions and restore order to the universe. And with that being said, it was so much going around about the movie. I'm recording this Monday morning after seeing the movie Saturday morning. It was so much said about like 3 hours. Can you miss any? So many different things that kind of was thrown around about the movie. It's definitely a full-blown 3 hours long. I have to say it didn't seem like it was 3 hours long because so much was going on. There was so much to process throughout the movie. But I just have to say I really enjoyed and liked the movie. I've heard a lot of things going around about, people feel like, they love this movie. It's the best, comic book movie ever. I think this is one of the most, and I don't necessarily feel that way. I thoroughly enjoyed the movie, which I'll get into later about far as what I rated the movie. I thoroughly enjoyed the movie. I feel like it's one of the most satisfying movies I've ever seen. You definitely know, and I think the biggest feeling I had, more so than anything, is how epic and historic what we're actually witnessing is when it comes to entertainment in the motion picture industry. Nothing like this has ever been pulled off. Through 11 years, 22 movies, 23 once we get Spider-Man Far From Home, which they said that will be the official end of Phase 3. So I guess Spider-Man Far From Home is like the epilogue, even though this is kind of the conclusion. That's the epilogue. of the Infinity Saga, it was one of the most satisfying in realizing like the scope of nothing like this has ever been tried, done, accomplished, and executed so successfully ever in the history of motion pictures. It might not ever be done again. So we're witnessing something hugely epic, and the scope of that I think hit me more than anything else while I was like sitting in the theater. And going all the way back to Iron Man in 2008, remembering being in the theater for that movie. I've been to the movie theater to see all 22 of these films, and I've reviewed every single one of those films on the channel in the 13 years I've been podcasting. So it definitely was a bittersweet, feeling. Yes, the MCU is going to continue on past this, but like this in this incarnation, it's going to be different. And I definitely had got the feels about that. I think it was definitely a lot of emotions going on, with the movie. So I tried to process it, step back. I didn't just want to gush because I want to always be fair and unbiased in anything I review. So I really had to step back from the movie, and take a day to like really process it, break down the movie into its parts so I can talk about it logically, coherently, and go over what I liked, what I loved, and certain things that I disliked about the movie, because it was a few things that bothered me that I didn't just love. But overall, I think this is a wonderful movie. I can't wait for it to come out on home video. I will rewatch it again. And I'll have to preface this from the group of you guys that are on the Facebook group. And I really encourage anyone that listens to the podcast, if you want to be more connected to the community that we're building here, go over to the Facebook group. I'll put a link I already have a link on the website. If you go to support, I think it's there, but I also will put it in this episode, and I'll put a link on the website. So when you go to the website, underneath the episode posting, it'll be a link to the Facebook group. We only have like 21, 22 members, but we constantly talk, and we just talk about different things that we're doing, and it comes to comics and then some uncomic stuff, because we're becoming friends as we've getting to know each other and talking. And I posted an image I found on YouTube with a updated like watch order as far as the timeline on how to watch the movies. And I had posted that a while ago. I had one of the Leroy, which is a listener, or used to be a listener. I don't know if he still is because I lost contact with him over the past few years. But he started his own YouTube channel called Comic Tube, where they posted like on Facebook and on Instagram, updated watch order based on the timeline. So I took that right about a month or so, right when the trailers really start ramping up for Endgame, and I went back and I watched all the movies. We had just came off of seeing Captain Marvel, so I didn't go back to rewatch Captain Marvel. It was still pretty fresh in my head. But then I pretty much, I own all the other movies, so I went back and watched everything up until Endgame, and I think I finished watching Infinity War like last Monday. So I got through all the movies, being like keyed up and super prepped for Endgame, seeing it on Saturday. And I was like so invested. And the funny thing is, in rewatching all the movies, in watching in that order that they suggested, and let me find the image. I have it somewhere, and I can tell you what the recommended watch order was for it. So they recommended the viewing order be Captain America, the first Avenger, then Captain Marvel, then Iron Man 2, Thor, The Incredible Hulk, The Avengers, Iron Man 3, Thor the Dark World, Captain America the Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy 2, Avengers Age of Ultron, Ant-Man, Captain America Civil War, Black Panther, Spider-Man Homecoming, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Doctor Strange, Thor Ragnarok, and Avengers Infinity War, then plus you got, then you go into Endgame. And I enjoyed watching the movies in that order. It gave a different context in reference to certain events, being able to go view them all. And pretty much I watched them, pretty much back to back. I watched at least one movie a day, certain days, or like on the weekend, I watched maybe 2 or 3 in a day. So it was broken up over that like month because I finished a little early in there. And plus I was sick during that time. So I doubled up and watched a few more. Certain characters that I didn't like, or certain movies I didn't like as much, I liked more with the frame of reference and coming off another particular movie. You saw the connections and the connective tissue way more watching them back to back like that. So I really felt super connected to the world, the universe, and everything around it, like going into it. And I was super keyed up because certain characters I think I fell in love with more rewatching the movies. I've talked about it previously that Gamora wasn't one of my favorite characters in Guardians 1, Guardians 2. It really took me to Infinity War to and some in Guardians 2, but mainly in Infinity War to really start appreciating the character. So it amped my feelings up for her like even more, going back watching the movies and then watching them in that order of watching them back to back. You could see more of a story arc because you have those gaps of a year or so or multiple years between movies. You lose a certain rhythm, so you gain a certain rhythm in watching them. Just like, I guess, if you're reading comics sometime, you're reading like a trade or multiple trades like back to back. You get into a rhythm reading that comic book and you feel a certain closeness or connection to a particular character, especially if you like that character and you're reading so much of it. You get in the rhythm and a vibe and you feel like you understand or get a better glimpse of the story arc or the development of the character. And so watching the movies in this way, you could kind of see those arcs a little bit clearer than breaking them up, or even watching, especially because of the cameos and how everything was cross-pollinated, like it's even better watching them in that particular order than maybe just watching Captain America 1, 2, and 3 or Thor 1, 2, and 3. Seeing like their other appearances in other movies, you can see a more fully fleshed out arc to characters, which I really enjoy having that experience. And I probably will rewatch all the movies like, once everything comes out on home video in a few months. Because, we have Far From Home in July. So, like, maybe the end of the summer, like in September, October somewhere, once everything is out, as far as everything that's really included in this three-phase saga of 23 movies, then I might even sit down and watch them all again, do another watch-a-thon. And just really take it all in. But with all that being said, let me talk about things I enjoyed. Like I said before, I felt like it was definitely a satisfying conclusion to the Infinity Saga, and I'm interested to see what does Spider-Man Far From Home add to it, as far as like an epilogue on where things might go in the future? Because a lot of questions. This movie leaves a lot of questions. Maybe a few too many for my taste. Certain ones were set up better than others. One thing I thoroughly enjoyed and was like an emotional beat for me, and it gave me, the feels, is that I loved in the scene where Steve and Tony go back to the 1970s, and seeing James Darcy cameo as Jarvis really touched my heart, because if you've been a long time listener of the show, you guys know that I have watched like all the Marvel shows, all the main Marvel shows. I haven't watched like some of the newer shows like Cloak and Dagger and Runaways and stuff like that, because I don't have Hulu, and I think I might have Freeform, but I haven't watched the newer shows. But like the core shows, like the ABC shows, like I watched both seasons of Agent Carter, which I love that show. I love Haley Atwell as Peggy Carter. I love that show. which was funny because I don't normally like period piece things. But I love her character, and I love that show, and it was so sad. And I hope they bring it back at some point on Disney Plus, because they had 2 full seasons, and it was things set up for a third, but it just got canceled. So I hope at some point down the road they'll bring it back on Disney Plus. I have my fingers crossed on that. So it was really great seeing James D'Arcy, because it was always been so much being said about how the TV shows did not connect to the movies, and I know it was a lot of drama behind the scenes through who the head of the TV department was. I think James Horn and Kevin Feige, and they had a lot of back and forth going on. So it was good seeing that tidbit where they were without saying anything, just by that appearance, you then know that the shows are connected to the universe, and that is the same world. And, because they made it confusing. But Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., some people love it, some people hate it. I've enjoyed the show from the beginning, and I've watched every episode, I've watched every season. Very much so, regardless of what they've said. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is heavily connected to the MCU. Though they might never referenced it, they didn't know Coulson was still out there, all that kind of stuff. It is connected. They furthered that in Captain Marvel, because the things that were set up there even further tie into the fact that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. technology we saw in Captain Marvel that was then incorporated into S.H.I.E.L.D. that we've seen used on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. throughout the years. Characters that we've seen connected from the movies have shown up on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So I like that, even if, that we do know in every shape, form, or fashion that they were tied in. Especially the first seasons, well, really all the seasons for the most part tied into them. When the movies came out, the events that happened in said movie were connected to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., going back from, the whole Winter Soldier and S.H.I.E.L.D. being, with the Hydra. That was a huge theme in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. for multiple seasons that they dealt with. The Inhumans were set up heavily and fleshed out heavily through the seasons of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Even though we got that god-awful short run. It wasn't horrible. It just was not executed well. I actually even watched that show. I even watched the ABC's Inhuman show. And it was meh. It was probably their worst attempt out of the shows that they did, and just the low budget, it just could have been executed so much better. And I wish they would have left it alone and just let Feige do the movie that he had planned on doing. I think it would have been so much better than them doing a low budget forced television show that didn't even it didn't even get past the one season. So a lot of different themes, Thor: The Dark World, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. had an episode where they came and they did cleanup over in Europe where everything went down at the end of Thor: The Dark World. So they still tied in, even though in the press they were like, they don't work together, they're not interconnected. They were interconnected. Coulson was a character that originated from the movies that went to a television show, and we saw flashbacks of him in Captain Marvel. He existed in that world. So the two were interconnected. We saw over the seasons of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., we've seen Sam Jackson, Nick Fury's character on the show. We've seen Lady Sith's character on the show, multiple episodes. So it was crossover and cross-pollination. A lot of people didn't know that. So it was good for me that I invested all those time watching all those shows, and to get that nod. And he was only on screen for a few seconds, and he said one or two lines, but it was just great. It just did my heart a service of seeing that it was connection there, no matter how much people try to fight it, or people that didn't watch the shows, try to claim they weren't important. They were. A lot of stuff was established there that people need to go back and watch to really appreciate it, because it fleshes out the MCU even more. Just like it was really important, especially like the last few seasons of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. really established that the Kree were not good people, and they were villainous, and they really expand upon that in a major way in those episodes and in those seasons. I read a lot of articles coming out that the main reason Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was being delayed so long was because where they're going with the show based coming off of Endgame, so it won't be coming out till after Endgame hit and the repercussions of that stuff hit, and then we were going to get the next season, which they already did like a teaser trailer for it, but it will be forthcoming, which will be it'll be interesting now with everything we saw in this movie on how that kind of fits in, because they always have it fits in and have to deal with the repercussions of events from the movie. So that'll really be interesting going into this next season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. The standouts for me were, I would say Scarlett Johansson was phenomenal in this movie. Chris Evans, Robert Downey Jr., and I even thought Paul Rudd really showed range and was really kind of like him. I feel like Paul Rudd and like Scarlett Johansson were like the two like heartbeats of the movie. They added, one was the heart, one was the soul. And it was great seeing all these characters that we've gotten to know through so many movies. We've been with Scarlett Johansson since Iron Man 2 throughout. And it was cool seeing the arc her character took through the journey. And I really, everybody had, their own perception or speculation on like who was going to die in the movie and all those different things. I really didn't see her death coming, and it really was a blow to me because, like I said, I assumed it might be something between Steve and Tony, that they might see their demise in some way, but I really didn't see her coming. And so, like I said, that was kind of like a gut punch for me when it happened. Because I had fell in love with her character so much and like how she progressed so much, and especially with Winter Soldier being one of my favorite MCU movies, and the conversations her and Steve have throughout that movie on her trying to establish who she is and not being a spy 24/7 and establish who you are as an actual person. She's like, he was like, are we friends? And he was like, well, are we? And he was like, well, who would you want me to be? And he was like, be yourself. And she was like, had been a spy for so long. And that time leaving after, at the end of Winter Soldier, when she exposes all the secrets from S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra to the public, she goes off. And then we see her in a way better place come, what was it? I think, Captain America Civil War. She's in a way different, better place at that point. And I would like to see that story. I don't know if her movie will kind of cover that period or not, but that is another conversation for a little bit later. But those performances really hit me extremely hard. Like, they really stood out to me. I thought Brie Larson, even though she had a short amount of screen time, I think at this point now she is more established in this movie, and she's really solidified herself as Captain Marvel from this movie going forward. And I can't wait to see what we're going to get next with her in her next outing or whatever her next appearance may be in the MCU. Another character that I really loved, and I didn't love the character at first, but Karen Gillan, I don't feel like got enough credit for her character arc throughout these films as Nebula. She really did good work, good character work, and I didn't anticipate. Well, let me say this: I wasn't sure from what the little parts, the few trailers that I had seen, that she would have factored in to be such a huge part of this movie. I had a feeling she definitely would be a more integral part from before Infinity War came out, and I finally read the Infinity Gauntlet. I knew she played a major part in the second half of that story, so I figured if they're semi-comics accurate, that she would play a bigger part. But the twist on how the part she played in this, I didn't see coming, and it was kind of cool, and it really upped the stakes of everything. Because it definitely raised it up the ante. It really put our heroes in peril at the point that Thanos found out what they were doing, and he went on the attack. Because they really could have got away with this kind of scot-free, and it would have been easy breezy. And once she was compromised, once Nebula was compromised, and Thanos was aware of what they were doing, and that he had succeeded in their future, it really then put the S hit the fan, as they like to say. So it was cool that they raised the stakes in that way, and they twisted her importance in the story and purposed it properly for this film. I feel like she's one of the most underrated stars in the franchise. I really think she was underrated. You don't hear many people talk about her performance. I've heard some people say they didn't like her performance. I think she's a really good actress, and she did a great job with the character. One issue that I'm going to say that I had, the movie was very thorough, and they did great things like the cameo of James Darcy, and it was certain aspects, and all the different cameos, bringing back Robert Redford, Frank Grillo, Rene Russo, Natalie Portman, all this crazy cameos. But it was one cameo that bothered me at the very end of the movie at Tony's funeral at the lake house. It was a teenage boy in the background that they didn't say anything about. So I had to look this up, and I was watching different videos about cameo appearances and all that, and I found out the kid was Harley Keener. Harley Keener is the little kid from Iron Man 3, and the part was played by the same actor. He's grown up. He's a teenager now. And it would have been nice if it wouldn't have to be no whole scene. Just in that scene, it would have been nice if maybe Pepper had walked up to him or Happy and was like, "Thanks, Harley, for you showing up." It would have meant a lot to him, and he could have said something like, I owe that at least to him, how he changed my life, to show really how much that he had become a mentor to so many people, not just Peter, but he also affected this young boy's life. Because you have to think about how he left him at the end of Iron Man 3. Like, he had redone his whole garage. He had left him a car. He had really decked him out and set him up to be successful in the future. He saw that potential in him. So it would have been cool to have at least acknowledge verbally somehow on who the individual was, instead of just glossing over him, and we were left to wonder or look on IMDb like I did to confirm, to make sure that was him and that it was the same actor. That it would have been some small acknowledgement on who we were seeing, so it could have had that emotional weight, that even more emotional weight to that scene and how complete it was. Another issue I had when it comes to, because they included so many different things throughout the movie, I was bothered by certain characters, supporting cast, wasn't represented or shown or mentioned at all. And I thought it was weird that we knew that Cassie was still around during the 5 years. She didn't get dusted, but we never really got confirmation if Judy Greer's Maggie or Bobby Cavalli's Paxton, did they get dusted? Did they just die? What happened? And I felt like you could have just put some lines of text in when Paul was realizing that when he went to the house and he knocked on the door and Cassie came to the door, and he was confused on who it was. And then he was like, "Cassie," and she was like, "Dad," and she started crying. He could have just said, "Where's your mom? Where's your dad? Are they okay?" And she could have just, while she was crying, realizing that it was him, she could have just shook her head to be like, "No, they're gone." And that's all I needed. Just some acknowledgement. You don't even acknowledge them. And you look at the two Ant-Man movies, they're integral parts to the cast. Even if you didn't mention the crew, the ex-con crew, I get it. But especially how they push, especially Ant-Man and the Wasp, how they push the idea of so much of them being a blended family and them finally all getting along, to not have that there bothered me, because you included Harley Keener that was in the one movie. They've been in two movies, and again, it was the mother of his child that we see in the movie, and there's no acknowledgement whatsoever that was she ghosted, was she dusted, and when he was looking at the thing, we never really got, far as I remember, I was watching it, I don't remember him ever seeing Maggie or Bobby's name, or Maggie or Paxton's name on the thing. He was really looking for Cassie, and when he didn't see it, he saw his own name. I didn't see either one of their names on it. You guys let me know in the comments, like reach out to me if I'm wrong, let me know, but I don't remember seeing it. And also, Lupita Nyong'o's Nakia character, I hope I pronounced that correctly. I don't know, because how Black Panther ended, I don't know if they got married and she was the queen or not. But they were in a relationship, and we never see her any mention. We see Angela Bassett back as his mom. We see Shuri back as, she's back, and she plays a small part in the movie, but we don't see her. And it's just weird, because he chased her the whole movie. He had been in love with her, and it's like no mention, no sight. That's just weird. Maybe she was back in Wakanda, taking care of Wakanda, and while he was gone to fight. I don't know who was, again, and that was another question, like, who was, in the 5 years, who was watching over Wakanda? Was she not ghosted and she was the one watching over? Was it M'Baku? Was he ruling in that 5 year stead? Like, what was going on? So that's questions, I guess, that's going to be left for Black Panther 2, because we do know that's coming down the pike. It's, and the point, he's already Ryan Coogler's already signed on, so that'll be interesting. But I felt a certain kind of way that those supporting characters are very integral to those two characters, and it was no acknowledgement. But then you throw in James Darcy's cameo, and clearly if you watched Agent Carter, you knew exactly who he was. That was Jarvis, and and it was hard to kind of determine. Like I said, I had to do some research, because like I could identify everybody in that scene except for the kid. So I was like, who is that? So then as soon as I got home from the theater, I started researching till I finally found out who it was. So that was two things that kind of bothered me a little bit on the side of, I just would have liked just a little bit of explanation there. Then I could be like, oh man, he's grown up. Like, that's dope. Without looking it up on the internet. You got to research things out after you see a movie that should have been evidently made in the movie. It bothers me just a touch. Now, questions that we're left with coming out of the movie. We saw during the heist in the 2012 heist to get the 3 stones that were in New York during the events of Avengers, the first Avengers movie. We saw that the part of the heist to get the Tesseract or the Space Stone went awry, and it ends up getting into Loki's hands, and he escapes. Is that Loki still alive, floating around? I think that was set up for the Loki Disney Plus show that's going to be coming. So I think that's set up to be addressed in that show at this point. So it's a question, yet it was a plot thread to be finished at another date on Disney Plus. Another question I have is that, did the alternate time Gamora from 2014 that came to 2023, did she get dusted when during the battle at the Avengers compound when Tony snapped his fingers, or did she survive because Tony, when he snapped, he wished away everybody that was with Thanos, and at that point she was on their side helping them fight? So the main question is, because how it was explained to us in the movie about the time travel and about stones being removed from a point in time, that the moment that they left that point in time, that it created a divergent or a branching timeline. I'm confused, yet I guess we'll find out later, because it was never made clear, did Gamora get dusted or not? And we saw Peter at the end of the movie, when we see the scene with the Guardians, that he was searching for traces of her, looking for Gamora. I don't know, was he looking for the what would have been the Gamora that we saw die in Infinity War? Or is he searching for the 2014 Gamora and that she just got away? And it just wouldn't make sense. Why would she kind of run away at the end of the battle? Or did she just leave? You know, like we didn't see any of that. So it's just all left kind of in the air. It's a question that I'm left with. Did she get dusted? Did she survive? Are we gonna have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3? It's not gonna be the search for Spock. It's gonna be the search for Gamora. Like let me know something, Al. What do you think? Now another thing is too. It's another question that I have at this point, from how the Ancient One described things or broke things down. It leaves us with two divergent timelines, because we know Steve went back. He went back to put all the stones back where they were to close any branching or divergent timelines that they may have caused by getting the Infinity Stones. Because in the timeline, the present day of 2023, we know that the Infinity Stones were destroyed. Thanos destroyed them and almost killed them before Thor killed them. So they're gone in the present day. So they had to go back and put them back, like the Ancient One said her and Bruce came up, or Professor Hulk came up with, that he would just have to return them to those specific moments to close any branching timelines. But we still know it's two, because Loki got away in 2012 with the Space Stone. And I guess we'll see. It remains to be seen what happens with Loki because of that, and what divergence in the timeline that causes. And it had to be some kind of divergence in the timeline where Steve goes back and meets Peggy, and I'm assuming that would be in 1945. I'm assuming, because that was when the events of the end of Captain America, the first Avenger, would have ended, where he crashed and he was going to meet her in a week at the club for a dance. So I'm assuming he went back to that moment he met her for said dance. So that alternate timeline would have been 1945. Yes, I know you're listening and you're shaking your head like, how did he do it? I did a lot of research over the past day and a half. Trust me, I was doing a lot of research and I was taking a lot of notes. So we would have alternate timelines in 1945 to the current day, because Steve stayed in that time, and we saw him appear in 2023 to hand off the shield to Sam. So I'm assuming that is an alternate version of that timeline. We have the 2012 where Loki removes the Space Stone from 2012, and he disappears to we don't know where. And then the 2014 timeline of, and I'm curious about this too, because when Tony snapped, I don't know, did he snap to just kill Thanos and all his army? How does that alternate the timeline in 2014? Did he, when he snapped, because we don't know what he snapped for, we just know a snap happened and they dusted. Excuse me. But was that dusting just removing them from the 2023 timeline back to their own with no memory of anything that happened? Or did he dust them and they were gone forever? And then what does that mean for the 2014 timeline? Because then it's no Thanos in that timeline. It's no Gamora if we're left to believe that she's now stranded in 2023. And Nebula, the 2023 Gamora, the 2023, I'm going to try that again. The 2023 Nebula killed the 2014 Nebula. She shot her in the chest point blank. So then she's dead. So wouldn't that be another branching timeline there? I'm just saying. I don't know. And, were they permanently removed from the 2014 timeline with the snap? Or did he just replace them there with no memory of anything that happened from their mission? we don't know. I'm just saying it remains to be seen. Those are observations that I made because I'm a nerd and I drilled down on it, and I'm curious. So we got set up for the Loki show from the movie. We got set up for the Falcon and the Winter Soldier show coming out of the movie with that passing of the shield to Sam. We didn't get any setup for the WandaVision show or the Hawkeye show, which they're still trying to get together. So that hasn't been 100% confirmed yet, but they did say they want to do it. They're trying to confirm Jeremy Renner and nail the details down to that show. And you see remnants of where that would go a little bit based on the events of the movie. The WandaVision, I'm unsure of, because my biggest question is, did Shuri get enough time to copy his memory separate from the stone to be able to rebuild Vision? And it was an interview or something with Elizabeth Olsen where it was some image in one of the presentations or something they did that looked like they were in the 50s, and she was like, that was a good tease or something of that ilk. So it's a possibility that the WandaVision show might be set like in the 50s, and I don't understand. I don't know what's going on with that. So it's still like a lot of questions to be had. I don't really know. So like I said, I feel like as much as I enjoyed the movie, much as it was a satisfying conclusion, it's not perfect. It left some really open-ended questions to certain things. I'm not going to go too deep on speculating where all this stuff will lead to, because Spinner Rack Bros is going to be doing an episode where we're going to do another speculation. We did one after Captain Marvel leading into Endgame. Now that me and Heath both have seen Endgame, we're going to do a speculation part 2 based on everything we've seen. What are some of our theories for what's going to be coming forward, which is going to be really interesting. So that'll be the next episode of the podcast that you'll get, is that us sitting down, breaking down some of our speculation theories of deciphering all this stuff and try to see where this might lead us going forward. So I don't really have too much more to say in the realm of the movie. Far as my rating for the movie, I gave it an overall score of an 8.75 out of 10. Like I said, I really enjoyed the movie. I feel like it was so much to process, and it was so much. I feel like I need to see the movie again, and I feel like it probably will go up to a 9 or maybe even a 9.5. I don't think it's a 10, but I really enjoyed the movie. I really loved the movie. I just wasn't like, God, it's the best comic book movie ever. And I don't think it's my favorite MCU movie of them all either. Just for personal reasons and the emotion that I have to certain other movies that I spoke on before, because of personal reasons, I feel like those movies are still a little bit better. And it'll be a countdown episode coming where I will rank all my favorite MCU movies. That's coming too, so that'll be coming down the pike shortly. So, and then I will get into that conversation at a later date. Excuse me. As well. But that's all I really have to say about it. I think this is an awesome movie. If you've listened to this and you haven't seen the movie yet, shame on you. I've spoiled it. But I still think it's worth going to the theater to see. I know I've talked to some of you guys in the community, and you've seen it multiple times, and I'm jealous. And that's dope. Yeah, I just love the MCU. I love the MCU, and I love that it's continuing forward and such. And we're on the edge of our seat to see what's next, because we don't really know. We got a few breadcrumbs, but it is not laid out for us, and it's the great unknown at this point. And I'm digging it. I really am digging it. As always, check out the YouTube channel. Again, it's youtube.com/Comic Book Savant. Check out the website. Any information related to the show, check it out. Also, if you are thinking about supporting the show, check out me over on Patreon. I have a Patreon campaign going. It is patreon.com/Comic Book Savant. for as little of $1 a month, you can become a patron to the show. It helps support the show. I have different tiers set up. You get different bonuses depending on what level. The lowest tier starts at $1. The highest tier is $7. I'm not trying to take all your money. I am trying to get a little bit of it because it helps go into supporting the show. Based on the Patreon support so far, I was able to upgrade and get a webcam, which helped with the last Spinner Rack Bros video we did over on Heath's channel. I'm going to be doing some different things in the future, like on the YouTube channel, and I thank the Patrons for that. So it's those kind of things that help with the cost of operations, upgrading equipment, those things to make the shows hopefully more quality. So I try to give it, and in the Patreon try to campaign, I work very hard to give you something for your contribution to the show, be it in bonuses. I do the Comic Books Savant Extra podcast, so even when you come in at the $1 tier, you get access to a whole nother podcast feed, and there's other things. But if you go over to patreon.com/Comic Book Savant, you can see all the different bonuses, and I'm constantly adding more things because as more patrons come, I'm adding more things to make it a value-added proposition for you for helping support the show. Also, check out the Facebook group. I will have the link to the Facebook discussion group down below, and it's just where we're all talking about comics and just getting to know each other and what we like and things like that. And I throw different ideas out about what I'm looking to cover on the show to get feedback from you guys in the community directly. And I have to say, you guys have been it touched my heart because you guys have been so awesome, and it's really has motivated me even more to just push forward and doing more content and diversify the content constantly across the board, not just here on the podcast, but for Patreon as well as the YouTube channel. So I try to feel like if you watch any of the content anywhere, it's not the same thing. You're not getting duplicate content. You're getting very diverse content across all three platforms if you're a fan of the show. I'm trying to give you something different and different looks every place and covering different things every place. So you guys have been so awesome and so great, and I thank you guys so much for being so supportive. Also, I got gear. We got new, you guys have seen hopefully you've seen the new t-shirts. If you look at some of the new videos I have on YouTube. I know on the video me and Heath recently did over on Serial at Midnight, I think I had the new t-shirt with the logo on it in the video, so you can kind of get a chance to see it a little bit. I'll have shirts on in some of the upcoming videos as well. I'm doing a new one for the community. I posted a question recently in the Facebook group, and we came up with a name for the community we have here. We're going to call it the Savant Society. So I'm working on a new t-shirt design that's going to be dropping there as well. So I'll put those links in the episode posting on the website. So if you want to check any of that stuff out, it'll be links there for you guys. And again, thank you guys for everything. Thank you for listening to the podcast, and check out my fam over at Serial at Midnight, serialatmidnight.com, youtube.com, Serial at Midnight. Me and Heath, we do the Spinner Rack Bros, and we do collabs over on his channel as well. So check him out. You'll see me over there. So yeah, there's content everywhere. So check him out, support him. He does some comic talk. You will hear him on here next episode. So shout out to the fam. So check him out as well. But that's all I have for you guys for this episode of Comic Book Savant. I'll be back next week with another episode, and I will see you guys then. Take care, and you guys have a good week. Talk to you soon.